In London, England, this is Josh Friedman coming to you the day after the 2019 European parliamentary election has completed. The results are in, finally, in the case of the United Kingdom, and I will be breaking them down with our special guest today. That is Ryan Black. He is a men's transformation coach and an entrepreneur who lives here in London. Ryan, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
I am, I'm well. I'm glad to see the results in terms of favouring Brexit. Obviously, I would have preferred a different result in terms of UKIP's performance, but we can talk about that, I think, a little bit more.
Okay, so what we know so far, the results are not final yet, but it's a pretty clear picture. Nigel Farage's new Brexit Party has emerged victorious here in the UK. The Brexit Party got about 33, maybe 32% of the vote. We'll see, about a third. And his former party, UKIP, lost pretty much everything. It had 16 seats, I believe, in the European Parliament. I think they've now lost them all. As Ryan has alluded to, you're a supporter of UKIP. Is that the case?
Well, I feel that the original party that stood for, the only party that was standing for a real Brexit, that was standing for the people, and continues to stand for the working class, the average person here in the UK, has always been UKIP. I feel as though what's happened is there's been a move by Nigel Farage to basically take over the electorate and take over a lot of these positions, and to me it feels like a case of what you might call controlled opposition, where there's a figurehead and a leader who is moving a bunch of issues and an electorate that maybe has alternative opinions or opinions that are too outside of the mainstream, and moving those over to somewhere that's a bit safer, that's a bit more able to be controlled. And that's what I feel is what the Brexit Party is. That said, the good news is despite what you think of UKIP or the Brexit Party specifically, or what you think of Nigel Farage specifically, the fact is that there's a clear majority in this country still, even after all the fear-mongering by the media and by the political elite, there's still a strong majority for this country leaving the European Union.
This is a big reason why I wanted to get your perspective. I haven't had the perspective of a Brexit supporter on this channel to this point, at least not talking about Brexit. But yeah, there's been chaos in a sense here. A lot has transpired since Thursday when people voted. The results stayed secret for the past 3 days or 4 days. 3.5, something like that. But during that span, Prime Minister Theresa May announced she will be resigning. She walked back into 10 Downing Street with tears in her eyes, or so it seemed. And this has given more fuel to the fire for critics of Brexit, who are saying that there's been such chaos in the country created by the vote to leave, and the effort to leave the country is a complete mess. So what would you say are the sentiments among Brexit supporters, among the people voting for the Brexit Party, among the people still voting for UKIP, and the ones supporting other parties who still support Brexit? Why, despite what seems like a very, very messy situation in the UK trying to leave the EU, why do people still support Brexit?
Well, I feel that Brexit supporters in this country could be very similarly compared to Trump supporters in the US. They are an overwhelming majority, but what's happened is the media has continued to portray them as though the only reason why they would vote in this case for Brexit is entirely due to the fact that obviously they're closet racists. They are xenophobes, and they're doing this out of hate right? Most of them, and if not hate, it's the only reason that anybody would have voted for Brexit is they didn't understand what they were really voting for. And so then we've seen once the results came in showing that people wanted Brexit by 52%, then the media created this fear campaign along with the political establishment to say, oh, well, you didn't really know what you were voting for. It's way more complicated than that. Is it a hard Brexit? Is it a soft Brexit? What about the border with Ireland? And all of these essentially non-issues, right? These things that are just details that we are supposedly paying our politicians to sort out for us. These became these scare tactics and this fear-mongering to say, look, you didn't realize what you were doing, because the fact is the 48% that didn't want this have to do everything they can to convince people, oh no, we have to do the vote again, or you don't really know what you were voting for, in order to try and confound and make the process more difficult. The fact is most of this country realizes and understands that being part of the European Union does not in any way benefit them. That's fundamentally what it comes down to. For all the things of there's free movement of goods and things like that. The fact is the average person knows over the course of the time that this country has been part of the European Union, we've paid out of our tax money more than we've ever received. They know that by having these free movement of goods, especially as well as the common fisheries policy, there's been a complete destruction of the Scottish fishing industry and many other local industries. And they don't want to keep sending their tax money overseas so that unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats can take €500,000 euro salaries to tell them what they can and should do with their lives.
What about immigration? There's been so much made, and often it gets a bit hyperbolic, but there's been so much made about immigration for and against Brexit. People supporting mass immigration to the UK, opposing it as that relates to Brexit. Is that still a core issue? Maybe it never really was, and people were voting, like you said, in their sense of opposition to the EU and its structure and its regulations. Where does immigration factor into all this?
I think the average person is more than happy for people who are skilled and want to integrate into this country and have a proper job and give back to society and do useful work and have useful skills to come to this country. But the fact is, what we've seen in the rest of Europe, especially in countries like Germany, especially in countries like Sweden, is we've seen an enormous amount of immigration by people who are not applying through any kind of real system. They don't necessarily have any particular skills, and as much as we want to be caring and compassionate to people, the fact that especially countries like Germany are enforcing quotas of how many immigrants, small towns that only have a population of a few thousand, how many of these so-called refugees and immigrants they should take in, people are absolutely against that. They don't want to see their town of 10,000, 20,000 people overrun with 5,000 people who don't speak the language, have no skills and no jobs, are wanting to bring 8, 10 kids with them eventually. It's absolutely unsustainable. And the idea that we're paying out to be part of this union that's then enforcing this completely unsustainable mass immigration on us is again another big reason why people are saying we don't need to be part of this, and it's not serving us and it's not helping us. All it's doing is it's fracturing our communities and making us poorer.
I'm curious, on a bit of a personal note, what's it like to live in London and hold these views that you have? London voted to remain, and in this election, London certainly did not vote for Brexit, at least not in first or second place. I think Brexit Party came in third place here in London. Anyway, London, by and large, is a liberal, pro-immigration city. So I'm just curious, on a personal level, what's it like for you to be here in London?
Well, I'm probably different to the average Brexit voter that that the media is gonna trot out for you, is not gonna really make much of a particularly nuanced argument, and if they do, then they simply won't be shown. The media need to portray anybody who is pro-Brexit as as a bigot, as a racist, as an idiot who doesn't understand what it is that they're voting for. I have the benefit of having spent a year getting a graduate diploma in law, where one of the main modules, which I got the highest marks in actually, was European Union law. So I'm very familiar with the structure of the European Union, how it works in terms of the Council, the Commission, the ECJ, and the European Parliament. And my final paper in that module was about how there is a significant democratic deficit in terms of the functioning and structure of the European Union. So when anybody challenged me on how I could possibly vote for Brexit and how it was racist and xenophobic, I said it has nothing to do with that. It's simply the fact that based on the structure of the functioning of these organs, there is no democratic accountability. The fact is that the European Parliament, which we're just now voting for people in, has basically no power. They have no power whatsoever to introduce legislation. All they are is a rubber stamping body that takes the legislation that's already been decided by the council and goes, has a debate about it and then rubber stamps it and votes on it. There's no true sense of accountability whatsoever, and most of the functioning of the European Union, if we actually look at what goes on a daily basis, is big lobbyists and big lobbyist firms for major corporations going in and negotiating deals so that they can make more money at the expense of the average person, at the expense of the taxpayer, and at the expense of small local businesses. That's simply a fact, and that's fundamentally why I voted for it. There's nothing. Didn't really have much to do with immigration for me. It was purely an economic argument that, as is always the case, the more government there is, the more bureaucracy there is, the higher taxes are, and the worse it is for the average person.
It's certainly very difficult to predict, but do you have any sense going forward what's going to happen with Brexit? Nigel Farage is using this victory as an opportunity to demand that he becomes, or his party becomes, part of the negotiation process with the EU. You have any idea what's going to happen? There's a deadline to leave in, the end of October?
Well, my view of the negotiations has been absolutely terrible. It's been some of the worst negotiating I've ever seen, because the fact is the European Union has a lot to lose if the UK goes and all that money stops flowing in, and Italy appears as though they could potentially be on their way out as well. Then this union really starts to crumble. So if I had been negotiating from the very beginning, then it would have been a very simple negotiation. I would have gone in and said, we will hard Brexit, right? Which wasn't even a thing until the media had to make up all these distinctions. But we will be leaving with no deal. We will revert to WTO rules, and you will not be receiving a penny from us anymore. There'll be no however many billion payments that will stop happening. So that's our position. Now tell us, negotiate with us. Tell us why we should do a better deal. What deal can you give us that's better than that? That's the place that I would have been in. And the idea that the fact that May has been going back, pleading and begging for an extension and all this stuff is absurd. She lost from the very beginning in terms of that position. So I absolutely agree. Someone like Nigel Farage should be part of these negotiations, because the centrists and the Tories and Theresa May have done an absolutely terrible job, and they've been negotiating from a place of weakness instead of a place of strength. The European Union needs us. We should go in and say, look, we're going to go to WTO rules. We can make individual trade agreements with individual European countries if we want to. And we can also say no tariffs at all. How about that? And so, tell us, do you have a better deal? If not, okay, we're walking away, and you're not getting any more billions at all. So it would be great to see. It would be great to see Farage in there. He'd probably do something very similar.
Any thoughts on what might happen? Is there going to be a change? I mean, in the approach, obviously we're getting a new prime minister, but we don't know if it's going to be a centrist, a Brexiteer, or Remainer. What do you think? Do you expect changes? Do you think this is going to drag on for years?
It seems as though it's likely that Boris Johnson will be prime minister, and he's said that he will deliver a Brexit and probably a hard Brexit. So whether he sticks to his word, who can know? But I think we have a much better chance of getting the Brexit that people voted for with Boris Johnson as PM and with Nigel Farage being part of the negotiations than we did when it was Theresa May fumbling and groping around in the dark like an idiot.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this perspective. You're this men's transformation coach, among other things. Is there anywhere people can check you out, find more out about you, or anything you want them to read or watch?
They can go to infinitemansummit.com. It's all there.
By the way, I've been to a couple of the Infinite Man Summits, and I highly recommend them.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thank you.